Mercury 101. And it's also fair. I said, let's add the retrograde, shall we? Let's add it, because I think retrogrades can be attached to all the planets. But everybody knows about Mercury retrograde. And we're going to talk about it later. But Mercury is the messenger. Mercury is also known as the scorched planet. Why is it the scorched planet? It's a scorched planet because it is the first planet after the sun. And astronomically, it wasn't always there. Scientists or astronomers are still scratching their heads as to how it got here. And they kind of saw it as a orbital or gravitational pull of like a hit and run type thing. It's very interesting that they've seen it as a hit and run, like Mercury's running away from something. But I like it. I like it because that can give an archetype for Mercury. Mercury is talking too much. Mercury is about communication. It's talking too much. Maybe it said too much things and annoyed somebody, and now it has to flee. And much like Uranus has, in the earlier solar story, let's call it, Uranus wasn't in the place that it is now. It's even tilted, right? It's been moved and tilted. And so Mercury's story is, it has a story. And it had a collision, or this is the idea, right? People are kind of assuming what's happened, right? Why it's so small, because it's one of the smallest planets. It's so small. And, so we've got Earth and its mantle, its core, its crust, outer layer is the whole thing is much let's say core. It's much thicker. We'll say about 50-60%. Whereas Mercury is much thinner. And this is due to this collision that's happened with it, yeah? Pew, pew, pew. And because of this collision, or this hit and run, or running somewhere, it's found safety in front of the sun. I mean, that's a very, very intense place to be. Mercury is a fast-moving planet. So in your chart, this is probably one of the signs you look for, or the planets you look for, when it's very potent, because where it stays or where it is a very big indicator of how you express or how you communicate. Let's say your Mercury is in Cancer, there is gonna be some softer elements about how you speak. If it's in something like Capricorn, it's gonna be very rigid, very hard, very, very to the point. We're not playing games. We're not mincing down our words to make you feel nice. The expression of how Mercury is shown in your chart is probably one of the important ones, right? But these are your faster moving ones before Saturn, all the other planets. And so this hit and run aspects, it reminded me of Anansi. This is my little banana, because there's a song, it's like, Anansi is a spider, Anansi is a man, Anansi is West Indian and West African, and then something, he went to sell to Brixton on a banana boat. I think there are clues to that song, right? But overall, I'm trying to remember the song now. And when he came to Brixton, everybody gave a shout, Anansi, Anansi. Whoever made that song obviously was alluding to something, some idea of carrying carriers of knowledge, carrying of ideas, this half man, half spider, carriers of some sort of truth, and bringing it from one plane to the next, or one area to the next. But this is Anansi. He is the messenger. He is Hermes. He is Thoth. He is, maybe, he is, once you said your prayers, he is the one that sends it off, you know, as above, so below. And as with as above, so below, you have as within and so without, which is the Thoth emerald tablets analogy about how the world works. And so with this idea of messenger, or communication, or intellect, it's very similar to Uranus. Uranus is like the collective, though, right? This is kind of collective consciousness about how we're dealing with things, how we're dealing with technology, or new waves of technology, or innovation, how we're responding to that. Rebellion, how we're responding to that. And Uranus is going into Gemini in April, I believe, next year. It's going to be interesting times. But this is the collective. This is how we are as a collective, which is very powerful, actually. And I think the challenge of the collective consciousness against whatever's been given to us is being challenged. So Mercury is the more interpersonal side. It's faster. It's gonna get to where it needs to go quicker. And so with this idea, the scientists said, no, we think it's a hit and run. They've found safety over here. Because Anansi's the same. When you think about the stories, he was always tricking the gods. He was always collecting, all the stories, all the understanding for life and human experience. And in a way, it could even be a sign. I can't even remember the Anansi stories, to be fair. I just know that he did a lot of tricking and climbing up trees. And he collected the stories for human consciousness to understand how to overcome things, how to overcome emotion, because he knows so much. It's no wonder that you have Gemini and Virgo governing Mercury. Because these two, even though seemingly at the surface you think, they're very different, but they have a duality to them. They express it in different ways, but they have a duality. So I found it interesting when we think of Mercury in its orbit. Its orbit is like an ellipse, right? And when it's closest to the sun, let's just say that Mercury's there, it's taking like the flares of radiative heat, right? And then when it's moving further out, it's much cooler. And this process, which is very quick, they anticipate, when I say they, I say the scientists, the astronomers, have anticipated that this could form at its poles, right? Some ice or water at these parts. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, who knows? But it's the smallest planet in the solar system. And I guess that's how it is faster, right? It doesn't have a lot of weight on it. And this collision, right, much like with Uranus has got a story, Mercury has got a story as well. Mercury, again, it's been anticipated that it had a huge collision. Much of its mantle got broken off. And it ran, this hit and run, it ran to the safety of the sun. He said, yeah, you guys can't come here. You guys can't come. I know how to be here. You don't have to be here. Let me stay over here. And so there's that. Now, I've noticed, much like Uranus is governed by Saturn and Aquarius, Mercury is governed by Gemini and Virgo. And they have different flavors to them. I would even say Gemini and Virgo can make really good business partners, because they have similar fundamental, they agree on a lot of things. Virgo's probably not going to be so extrovert about their maybe radical views, or because they are someone who cares about how they're seen, their identity. Gemini too, but they don't care, like they're just going to say what they have to say. So that I've said it's like more of Gemini is the external expression. So Gemini could be like when Mercury's really, hitting those radiation waves. And then Virgo's when it's like spinning a bit further out on its orbit. And this expression can be found in Mercury in your chart, how you're expressing that, how you're looking at that. And like I've said in my Gemini and Virgo 101s, that I've noticed that these signs make very good comedians, because they notice everything and then they are able to alchemize that and find humor in it. And this is kind of like that Anansi energy. Anansi is always seen as like the trickster, but like also like the jester in a way. Like they make everything fun. And I say that to say, when it comes to retrograde, this is probably some of the characteristics to explore when dealing with some of these kind of challenging transits, when it does happen. And this idea of Hermes, the Greek understanding, Thoth, the Egyptian understanding, that these are messages between God and humans, right? They're giving out the gist, Hey, what about this? What about that? Think about this. Or even on its darker side, maybe it's a bit destructive. Maybe it's truth that maybe people don't want to know, or you don't want to understand about yourself. But either way, it's something to take in. Now, I compared Mercury and Uranus because they have very similar characteristics. And so when you are looking at your chart, it's more looking at it in a way that it just helps remember that there are similarities to, planets, but they just operate in different ways. This is more expansive. This is more about the collective. This is more about interpersonality, as I said. And so when you're looking at your chart, let's say you had Mercury in Cancer. Depending on where it is on the chart, it's dependent on what you can quickly learn. The orbit of all these circles, this moves around really slowly on its axis, right? But in its orbit, it moves very fast. And I liked the idea of that because its rotary cycle, I kind of saw it as like a kebab, and it moves really slowly. It's taking all the flavors and such. But once it's taken it in, it's like it's measure twice, cut once, So it's giving this idea, this wit, this cleverness about Mercury is it needs to be expressed in its darker sense, or its in internal self and in its external self, because it has so much to give. But it is probably going to be right. It's probably going to gain it quicker. So I put language here because language, depending on where let's say Gemini or areas in your ninth house, you'll be able to learn languages really well, because it's like a natural part. Or you would be able to connect with people really well if it's in your 11th house. Or you'll be able to connect with people when it comes to business and work, in your 10th house. And even how it's expressed is in depending on the sign and the flavor that it gives to each one. This is also Mercury is a really, really potent sign, because communication this is what we're in the age of this, like in terms of technology. It's very potent. And yeah, where Uranus is going into Gemini in, I think it's April 2026. We're already starting to see this, let's say Gemini and Uranus together, combine the forces, and you make mental breakthrough. Yeah. And there is going to be a lot of breakthroughs. There is going to be a lot of things, a lot of outbursts, a lot of things that are not meant to be said, a lot of things that reinforce, maybe even free speech or dictatorships or the attempts of dictatorships. So this is going to be very interesting when it moves here in this area of this Mercurian energy. So yeah, something to think about. When you think of Mercury, think of Anansi. When you think of Mercury, think of Hermes, think of Thoth. They are all messengers. They are all there to give you information, whether you like it or not. So let's talk about these retrogrades. Now, retrograde is RX. You see this? That is retrograde. And sometimes when you have a planet, it will just have, let's put Venus here. It would just look like that. You say that's in retrograde. So in your natal chart, you might see these little symbols around. So what's happening with these retrogrades? What's going on? And ultimately in the sky, it's giving the illusion but at the same time, it's the Mercury, the retrogrades can go on a cusp. When it goes on a cusp, it goes into one part of the sky and kind of goes back. Yeah. And so it gets the flavor of both constellations, whether that's the constellation of Capricorn or Sagittarius. And that would add extra flavor to how retrograde is impacting us collectively, right? How Mercury retrograde is impacting us. And I think it would be fair to say that the eyes, when we're talking about what we see, is not always what we get. And this is why this encouragement of this Mercury of gaining information, but not just on the physical, but on the astral or in your mind, through meditation, however you want to do it. There are two things that you need to work on: the physical, the Saturnian area, and the internal. So with that, you have the illusions of what you see in the naked eye. And I put that to the example of when you're on a train. You're on a train, it's slowing down, and there's a train that's on the other track and they're moving fast, they're still going, but it looks like it feels like, or gives the illusion that you're going backwards. That's if anything, if you ever think, okay, retrograde's happening, just think of that phenomena when you're on a train and that scenario happens. It's an illusion. And what you're supposed to do is kind of look through the illusions. And because Mercury is a trickster, Mercury is a Nancy on his little boat, you have to see how you can outwit the trickster or outwit the gods. And sometimes that might look like somebody coming back from the past. and Mercury's like, I bet they're going to do it again. They're going to take him back again, or they're going to take her back again. But they're going to do it. And you've got to kind of go within and see what's happening there, where you're at. What are the illusions that could be playing in your mind to make you feel like you don't want to listen to your inner self? It could also be, I don't know, Rachel from HR. Okay, she's always doing bits. And, you come home, you get so annoyed. You're just like, oh, the next time I see her, we're going to do. And Mercury's just sitting there like, yeah, this is too easy, man. These humans, they're too easy to break. When are they going to get it, And instead, seeing Rachel as you and you as Rachel, because there are times where you can be annoying. And I don't know you guys, but you know what I mean. Like no one is that expression of annoyance. Everybody can be annoyed by everyone. So when you're allowing yourself to understand, how do I overcome this? Or Rachel being whatever she's in, because even people annoy Rachel. And how do I overcome this and don't allow it? Do I laugh it off? Do I act a bit like a trickster? Do I rise above it? What techniques are you using? Ultimately, the whole goal through retrogrades is to challenge how much you have grown. And it's a fast moving planet. So it's gonna be like, okay, no, you didn't make it. Oh, you made it. Yay. Bye. Are you seeing through the illusions? Do you remember? Okay, maybe some of you might not remember, but there was this book called Magic Eyes. And in the book, and I'm gonna do an edit, oh my gosh, of these pixels, right? That the magic eyes were ultimately these kind of weird images, but then when you crossed your eyes or put your eyes in a certain way, you will see another layer to the image. And what you've initially seen versus what is actually hidden is two different things. You might see a little starfish in the background. So I say that to say that your naked eyes is not what you see, is not what you get. And I think sometimes we may forget that because life, innit? Everything is physical. Everything is about the Saturnian way. And you have to kind of be malleable enough to kind of know the difference or feel the difference. And I thought I think it's called autostereographs. Let me see. I am gonna put an example and see if you can do it. But the trick is to if you can't defocus or unfocus your eyes, the other trick is to put your nose close to the screen and then slowly step your head back, and then you will start to see the second image. And this is the illusions, right? I was doing this, I was like, oh, should I do it? And this is pattern recognition. So why I'm doing this is because Mercury moves so fast, so it's always happening, right? It's like a cycle in itself. Mercury is always seeing whether you're ascending or whether you're going to go back into the same cycles. And much like the stereograms, they are patterns. How it works, which I find so phenomenal, is let's say you have line, all in this direction, right? But then you change the line, right? And you change it in the opposite direction. Now, you may have not noticed that looking at it. You may have. And then you keep going, right? You keep going. And maybe you do another one here. And you keep going. Now, what this does, it defocuses the eyes, right? And then eventually, that defocus lifts this layer up, the false layer, and makes you see what is actually beneath it. So with that being said, see retrogrades as stereograms. See retrogrades as an opportunity to read contracts slowly, especially if that stuff's coming around. It's just like the axis of Mercury, it moves slowly, but its orbit moves quickly. You can take it in, take your time. You don't need to rush, you know? It's about travel, right? Nancy in his little boat. It's about travel disruption. Okay, it's about how you're going to take time to, isn't, you know, nothing like plane crashes, but maybe like, you know, you're forgetting things, right? Oh, where's my passport? Like, so you take your time. You say, okay, right, let me go write a list. Let me just dot the I's and cross the T's. And that's so powerful, right? That this retrograde, especially Mercury, well, Mars is quite powerful as well, can have these impacts, right? These collective impacts. And yeah, I just found it interesting. So pattern recognition, or to break the sequence or code of whatever it is that you're doing so you get to the next level, like a game. You know, you beat the level, you go to the next level, and that previous level will be easy if you try to go back to that level. Sometimes in games, you can say, oh, let me just go back to the older level. I don't know, I'm talking about retro games here, people. And you're like, oh, this is so easy. When I first played this level, it was so hard, you know? And ultimately conquering your emotional reaction to things. How you are, or how you are communicating with yourself. How you no longer become predictive or predictable to Mercury's retrogrades or retrogrades in general, or even in your chart. It's an internal aspect where you're working within. You're working with some of these, Mercury witty trickster energies. Could be for good, could be for bad. Well, not bad, but could be intense, could be soft. Depends. You know, this energy is very much like you don't know what you're going to get, but you're going to get knowledge, you know, in the end, ultimately. So there's that. Hopefully, because I was thinking, how am I going to insert the stereogram in? But yeah, so the trick is like when one eye is looking, like if you cover your eye and you're looking at the TV screen, your eye is seeing one area of the screen, right? And your other eye is looking at another area. So when they come together, you see the whole thing. And so this is where you always remember what you see is not what you get, in the most complicated way. Well, it's not complicated, but maybe it's extra. But it's fun because the Magic Eyes was very fun. It then says what is being hidden in some of the visuals that we see, you know, what is being sent to us, that the eyes have been analyzed so well that we can start messing around and creating, you know, shapes. You know, I think it's really cool. So that is Mercury and the retrogrades. and I will see you in the next one. Take care.